Welcome, everyone, to your last session of the day. Today, myself and Matt will be taking you through how to build out a chatbot in under 20 minutes. But first, to recap, today we've had a number of presentations and talks about the role of analytics, data science, and generative AI across the organization. And we've also heard from many of our fantastic customers and partners about their experience with Dataiku. A lot of this has also been centered around the Dataiku LLM mesh and how it enables the abstraction of different components and elements to enable enterprises to scale out their use of generative AI.
Okay, so we know, that's strange. We know that it's the last session of the day, so if we stumble over our words, please, we apologize. But we also know that we're the only thing standing between you guys and a glass of wine. So let's have a quick recap before we dive into the fun stuff. So with Dataiku, we can use a number of visual recipes that are specifically designed to interact with the LLM services provided through the LLM mesh. We can do things like classification, summarization, maybe even some translation here and there. We can then move on to designing and engineering our own prompts using the Dataiku Prompt Studios to really refine how our responses are going to be received. Next, we can move on to something a little bit more advanced, where we're using the knowledge bank to add our own information to enhance our answers from our chatbot.
And of course, you've heard many times today about Dataiku Answers, the universal front end which sits on top of all of these applications, creating that chatbot or interactive interface, really allowing your end users to get the results that they need.
Sorry, excuse me.
So, because we are the last session of the day, we have decided that we need to come up with a use case that is of high value and importance. And so, because of that, we have decided just the right thing.
So Alex and I are going to New York in a couple of weeks to meet with our American colleagues. And if there's one thing we know about our counterparts stateside, is that they love a night of karaoke. There's nothing they love more than a night holding the mic.
Now, I myself am absolutely not a fan of karaoke. And even if I were, I never know what to sing, who to sing with, or even where we should go.
So what should we do about this? We'll create a chatbot to help us answer these very real and life-changing questions.
And for that, we're going to switch over to the Dataiku platform and look at what we have so far.
So I've spent the last couple of weeks gathering some information about our colleagues in the States. So we've got their names, where they're based, and what kind of singing voice they have, which is obviously all the underpinning foundations of our arena sellout duets.
So you can already see that we have a little bit of a flow already made. And this is using the Dataiku visual transformations that have been part and core of the platform for a long time. All I've decided to do is use a prepare recipe to perform a number of simple transformations, such as concatenating all of these columns into one so that we have the information to present to our LLM, and then renaming it so anyone else that comes into the platform can understand all of that vital information about our Dataiku colleagues and their preferred singing types. From there, I've then used a sync recipe to push it into a managed folder.
Now, as you can imagine, it's not just our contextual information about our colleagues that we need to make this effective. So we've been trawling the internet to find some of the best karaoke songs, where to sing them, and ultimately, which ones to sing together. We've put all of this into that same managed folder, so now we're ready to move on to the next step. Now, all of this data has been vetted and approved by Dataiku, of course, and this managed folder can exist pretty much wherever you like in the infrastructure.
So now we've got this basic flow, I want to perform a number of other steps before we put our web app front end on. And the first one of those is that we want to make sure that the information that's in our PDFs is in a tabular format so that it can be fed to our LLM. And for that, we're going to use the Dataiku text extraction plugin. Again, this has been part of the platform for a long time. All I'm going to do is extract that information from all of those files that we have within our PDF and push it to a new item on the flow. What this will do is add all of those different documents and their relevant sections into one output, which I can show you now. Once it loads, give us a second. It's a live demo. So here we have the file name and the file path. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the various text chunks that we've received from our vital karaoke information. From there, now I've got this data set, there is one more thing I need to do, and that's actually leverage some of those pink LLM recipes that we've learned so much about today. You'll have heard about the classification, the summarization, you'll have heard about the prompt recipes, but today we're just going to use the embedding recipe to create our knowledge bank. And for this, I just need to choose a number of different features. The first thing is our embedding column. So we learnt from our recent text extraction recipe that that's the text column that has all of the information about our karaoke bars and the people and the songs. I then want to add on any additional metadata as well. As we scroll down, you'll see that there are many more settings. Dataiku will have created some standards, and I'm just going to keep everything as it is for now. But as you've heard from many of the other presentations, this is a lot about iteration. So I'm going to save my embedding recipe and pop over to configure my knowledge bank. Here, I'll add my augmented LLM, and you'll see that Dataiku has already given it an LLM ID. It's randomly generated, so you never know what it's going to come up with. From there, I'm going to choose the LLM that I want to be retrieval augmented. I can choose how many documents I want to retrieve, and I can even go over to the core settings, where we mentioned this is using the Dataiku LLM mesh. So I have the option to switch out my vector stores, the models that are underpinning this entire process. Here, I'm using a specific vector store type, and I've also aligned my right code environment. So now that I've done this, I can just pop over to the flow and run the recipe.
So the knowledge bank is a great way for us to add our own created and curated data to help us answer these questions. So in this example, it doesn't really matter that ABBA's Mamma Mia is the best song to sing if I can't use the data I already have to work out who to sing it with. Now, as Alex has shown, we've created a knowledge bank without using any code, and for the most part, using the Dataiku defaults. In a second, we'll see a notification pop up in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen telling us that our knowledge bank has been completed and fully created, and then we can move on to the next step. Now, this is...
Perfect. That was fantastic timing. I'll refresh the page, and you'll now see that the knowledge bank has been filled in, which means we have now created that vector store. So now we've got a simple flow, but the underlying logic of our karaoke helper, karaoke companion that is going to change so many lives. So the next step is to build that front end on top, and we're going to use Dataiku answers, which is what we've heard about today, the visual way of creating front-end chatbots and interactive interfaces. So here, I'm going to go into my web app section, choose Dataiku answers, and type in karaoke helper.
So Dataiku Answers in this instance is going to help Alex and I interact with not only our underlying contextual data, but also an LLM to help answer these questions. But there's a number of things that we need to configure first. The first is our history data set, where we can keep track of our chat history. The second is connecting directly to our underlying LLM through the LLM mesh. The next is connecting to our knowledge bank in this case. But it doesn't have to be a knowledge bank. We could use a data set that already exists in Dataiku, which could be a very good foundation for the exploration of your own generative apps. So the next thing we want to do is configure how our LLM or our chatbot is actually going to appear to the user. As Alex is doing now, we're going to change the title, but we could add a brief or not so brief description and some example questions to help our users hit the ground running.
Sorry, you've got to bear with my typing.
It's typing in real time, it's fine.
So now I've added in the description, we'll get to the example questions for people that are going to be using. So Matt, what do we think people will be using this karaoke companion for?
Luckily, I have a list of example questions. So what should I sing if I want something poppy and for a group?
OK. I want something poppy and for a group. And the next one?
Let's go for... can you recommend a duet from your list?
OK. And the final one.
If I want to sing with a tenor, who should I sing with?
OK. Could have had a shorter question. Fantastic. So now we've added in those questions, I can start to configure the LLM and the LLM in context with our knowledge bank. So you've all heard about prompt studios, where we can start to iterate and manage those prompts and change them over time. However, in this case, we're trying to build this out very quickly, in which case I'll just add on some simple context that this is an empathetic karaoke expert. I've added on some initial information about how we want it to respond, and also some extra bits to make sure that it runs in the exact way that I want it to. But again, it's still an LLM, so we will see what it comes out with. So when I'm happy with this, I'm going to click Save and View Web App, and pop us out to our karaoke companion in Dataiku Answers. So Matt, time for you to test it out.
It's my turn to live demo. OK, cool. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start to test out how our chatbot responds to our example questions. So let's go for the first one here, and you can see it populates our question answering. And the great thing about the web app is we can see in real time how we are interacting with the underlying data product. So are we querying the LLM, or are we querying the knowledge bank? You can see here we have the option to turn off the use of the knowledge bank if we require. Now, I'm glad it came back with this answer because it's one of my favorite songs. But the response is, take me or leave me, from the musical Rent. So how do we take this a step further? Obviously, we all know in this room what data has been presented to the LLM. So let's go from our Dataiku profiles, who should I sing with? I'm going to give it some context. I'm not sure if this is true, but let's go and see what the response that we get is. Fingers crossed. Perfect. So it's taken a look at our underlying data, which includes our information about other Dataikus, and it's suggested Raj or Mike. So I can maybe potentially get in a practice session with those before Alex and I jump on the plane. What we can also see here is a list of all of the sources that we've used or referred to come up with our answer. And the top one is obviously where we've come up with most of the information, which is our original data set that Alex concatenated in our first step. Now, the next step we want to do is actually suggest some locations to our team when we get to New York. So I'm going to go ahead and ask. See what it comes back with. Perfect. So it has suggested a karaoke bar in Koreatown in NYC. So now I can actually start putting together some invites. Now, the last question I want to ask is I want to expand our playlist slightly. Now, obviously, we've seen some of the contextual information of the best karaoke songs, so we'll go ahead and ask for some more suggestions. $88, no, that's too much. Awesome. So now we have 5 additional songs that we could potentially add to our playlist, including the Human League. That's amazing. So it sounds like we've got a really good evening planned. I just need to put together an itinerary.
Yeah, sounds like you're going to have a great night.
Don't think you're getting out of it that easily, Alex. Now, let's see what Karaoke Companion has to say about that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a shame. But it looks like you'll be having a great night without me.
Yeah, so it does look like you actually did get out of that easily. OK, so what we've done during this presentation is we've created data, we've prepared it, we've created a knowledge bank, and we've deployed a web app on top that allows us to interact with this data product. The next step is sharing this with our colleagues across the pond. So what we can do is take our web app, and we can actually publish it to a workspace in Dataiku. Now, the workspace essentially allows us to publish all of the aspects of our data products that we actually want people to interact with. So you can see on this page, we have our original Dataiku profiles data set. So our American colleagues can maybe invite some more people. And then they can utilize the karaoke helper to maybe enhance our playlist a little bit more.
So with that, you've seen we've built out an application using generative AI in under 20 minutes. And that brings us to the end of the Dataiku Dataiku Summit. Thank you all for joining us today. And a big special thank you to all of the presenters, all of our customers that have come up on stage to speak about their experience, as well as our partners who sponsored the event, which is PwC, Kubrick, and Databricks. And if you want to join us, we'll be having networking drinks next door, starting very soon, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.